What's up, everyone? Happy Friday,
It is Friday afternoon already.
right?
This week has gone
All
like that.
ready. So fast, so fast. I can't believe it's Friday already, but I'm excited that it's Friday already. Welcome, everyone out there, everyone listening to On the Rocks, the show where we talk about accounting and accounting related stuff, mostly as it relates to e commerce, but not only. I am Christino, and I'm here with Jay Kimmelman, my co host. I got it. I nailed
You
it.
got
Fingers
it.
success.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Last week, Jay and I talked about Ramp. We talked about why we like using it as a payment solution, both for Hyrock and also for our clients. Like we mentioned and talked about last week, it's one of our favorite payment solutions. This week, we're going to talk a little bit more about one of Jay's favorite things to do, uh, which is tax planning. But before we get into talking about tax planning, what's happened since we talked last? In the news, there obviously was a really significant event. There was an assassination attempt on our former president, and I don't know that there's any like tax or e-commerce related impacts from that so much, but it was definitely something that felt like you couldn't couldn't disconnect directly from from just mentioning, right. The way that Jay, we've talked about it a little bit this week already, but the way that we kind of described it is as a day you'll always remember. And I think back on events in my life a little bit that are like that, um, that are days that I'll never forget, and there just aren't that many of them. And so I'm super interested in the ramifications of this particular event to understand how we feel about it in 5 or 10 years. Is this a thing that you'll remember exactly where you were, like on 9/11, where I know I was in English class. I think the teacher's name, I think it was Miss Andrews' English class in high school, right? Like I know exactly where I was, and then like more personal events, right? I remember everything about Game 6 for the Texas Rangers in their first World Series, where they had the opportunity to win. The game went to multiple innings, extra innings, and all of this stuff, and I remember everything about it. Because that day was extremely unusual, and then on top of it, it was extremely memorable. And so I do think that personally, I'm super interested in how I'm going to feel in the future around this, and whether it's something that I'm going to remember having been sitting on the couch and refreshing while my daughter was doing something, I'm sure, like outside or whatever, and being like, wait, what's going on? What's happening here? This is wait, what? So I don't know. I thought it was worth at least mentioning that, hey, we're not ignoring that this happened, but I don't think there's anything from an accounting perspective that matters. But it's definitely something that's thought provoking. Jay, do you have any extra thoughts on that?
No, I mean you talked about, where you were on 9/11. I know exactly where I was. And
Right.
I was like the first time I was constantly hitting F9 on my keyboard to refresh the browser to
Mm,
get more news. What was going on? What was happening? Because I was at work,
right.
didn't have any TVs, so wanted to know what was going on. But going back to the Reagan assassination attempt, I remember I was in middle school and
Yeah.
they brought a TV in for us to watch during that. And then I was in high school. Actually, I was a senior in high school when the Challenger exploded.
Yeah.
And I know exactly the stoplight I was sitting at because I wasn't in school that
Mm,
morning. And I was listening to Howard Stern, and he shut his audience down because all they wanted to do were make jokes about it. And he's like, "No, this is serious." And it's like it
yeah.
was like so alterating, all alterating. It so altered my thought process on Howard Stern at that
Yeah.
moment, and it made a long-lasting impact on my life at that point. So these events are
Yeah.
really important, and you know you might not think so at the time, but they will remain with you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because you're talking about the changes that happen to you and the changes that you make, and the thing that I learned about this from social media, of course, right? That's where I came from. I was scrolling Twitter or something, and it was right there, right on the right on my feed, and then there were like competing viewpoints popping up in my feed of like, is this a hoax? Is this here's all of this particular thing has to change. All of this has to change, right? All of these different viewpoints. And what it was very clear to me was um, I needed to put the phone down. I just need to get away from this. And so in a very short term period, right? At least something that has happened for me is that I'm already spending less time on social media. Because I picked up a book because I just wanted to, you know what, I don't know what's happening. I anything that I'm reading is just going to be like, maybe who knows whether it's fact, who knows whether it's fiction. Let me let it take some time to digest. Everyone is heated, all the different sides are heated, right? Is this going to change the way that I'm interacting with, everything? And so and so um, that's really true, because if that does happen, right? If there are more people like me who are like, I need to pump the brakes on this social media time. Maybe that does impact e-commerce in the longer run. Maybe we find that people are spending less time scrolling through those ads, right? Maybe you don't get as much value from your ad spend. That seems like a very, very significant stretch, right? Like, sure, okay, maybe that happened for one or two people like me, but I am sure that I'm the exception. So my ultimate guess is that we'll just have a collective memory of an event like this that everybody is aware of, and that really kind of, unlike a lot of other things, like happened in real time and happened on social media. Like 9/11 didn't happen that way, obviously. Challenger didn't happen that way. It's been a long time since there were these types of events that impacted the nation overall that were online. Um, and so it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens next. I'm sure there's not really much of an accounting or e-commerce impact, but I
Well,
guess we'll find out. Like you
we
said.
have a story coming up here shortly that's going to spread some light on that. So let's wait till
Mm,
that comes up. So
that's fun. Let's. Okay, then. As I was reading through the news out on, I think it was Journal of Accountancy, I read a little article. There's a lot going on with AI and other solutions. Again, the IntelliGize has come out with a SEC exploration AI tool, which sounds super, super neat, because trying to find information that you need in SEC filings can be really, really difficult. And being able to let a little bot do all that for you uh, does provide a lot of value. Um, it would make it a lot easier to search for specific types of situations, and also to give yourself a little bit more clarity on certain companies, I'm sure. One other AI solution that I saw that was coming out of that same article is that Bloomberg, they have integrated some tax solutions within their own tax tools to make it a little bit easier to populate forms and to fill out some of the information that goes along with that. So I thought that was a those both are very, very useful uses of AI. Um, and so I'm sure we'll continue to see stuff like that happening all over the place. Jay, any thoughts about those two AI solutions, or just another? It's still happening.
yeah, it's coming. I mean,
It's
I'll
coming.
love to play with them, but at this
Mm-hmm.
point, that's all it will be for a little bit at least.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. Um, I also read in that same article, actually, it was just kind of like a fact roundup or something like that. I think the name of the company is Clio. So Clio, if this is you and it's not your name, I'm sorry, but CLIO, which is a legal solution. Like you can use it for legal related stuff. They have also added some focus on bookkeeping and accounting solutions within their same product set. That's focused on legal entities, same as their other stuff. But it sounds like it's a company that's really trying to find their niche, and so that's not the topic for today, but it might be a topic for the future, of owning your niche, because they are definitely doing that from top to bottom. So I think that's a really interesting development there. Um, from the IRS's perspective, the only thing that I could find that happened this week is that the IRS issued their final RMD regs, so the required minimum distributions, which I think are retirement related. And Jay, I have just a simple question for you. Do we care about this? Like, is this a big deal? Does it even matter?
You know, if you're of retirement age and you're at that point, you're pulling the money out, you
Yeah.
might just want to, do a tax plan and see. So it is kind of relevant to our
Hey,
conversation later, but
it is.
you just want to see where you stand. The whole point of those retirement funds is put the money away and either defer the tax and pay it um, when you're of retirement age, when your income's supposed to be lower,
Right.
and pay less in tax, or have it grow tax free. So
Right.
pull those funds out, and hopefully you are in retirement and you're not earning still what you were earning previously. Although with inflation and all those other estimates, people are expected to work longer and later in life. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
not the case, and you don't have to worry about tax planning it at that point.
Yeah, right. Let's hope so. So I hope to not have to worry about RMDs for a really, really long time. But I do kind of think RMDs are a good thing from the perspective of your own retirement. That means that you have had success. So RMDs they're like a really big tax bill, right? That means that you made a lot of money. So that's a good thing. So I hope to have RMDs one day, but I won't be worrying about that for quite some time. Those are kind of the topics that I think that we'd seen that had come up related to accounting issues. The As it comes to e-commerce issues, it was Prime Week, might still be actually, and so Jay, I bought something. I bought another cup, and I emblazoned it with this with the High Rock logo on one side, got the Rebel Rock logo on the other side, because I had been complaining about not not having a thing, and I was like, well, why don't I just fix this myself? I can just make my own. And so now I got to find some stickers. I know I had a A2X sticker around here. Maybe as we're talking about politics and stuff, I have a I voted sticker. Maybe we'll slap that guy on here. I got two of these, so we'll try to rotate them all around so nobody gets bored or anything. But
Well, you will be going to ZeroCon in about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks at this point.
yeah,
There will be
something like
plenty of
that.
stickers
Yeah.
floating around there for you to bring back.
Man,
And
I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
I would bet dollars to
Get ready to
donuts that you will find a cup there that you will find liking for you to use during our sessions on the Rocks.
I cannot wait. I am so stoked for both stickers and cups and the whole lot worth. But that was my only Prime Week purchase. Jay, did you partake in Prime Week?
I did, and for
Yeah.
some reason, my Prime purchases are being delivered Monday. I
Oh,
ordered them on
yeah.
Tuesday,
Oh my gosh.
but it might have
Wow.
something to do with the fact that Tuesday night we pushed to a larger order because Abby
Mm,
was getting what she needed for her dorm room. And
yeah.
those of you
Oh my
listening,
gosh, exciting.
my daughter Abby is going to be a freshman in college, and she will be heading out in about a month. And so she's starting to prepare all that. So she put about 14 items in the cart, and judging, that we just added to the 10% increase that they had year over
There-
year
That's
for
right.
Prime Day.
Yeah, I read in an article that there were $14.2 billion worth of sales during the two Prime days. That's out of Adobe Analytics, so it's maybe even higher than that. But that's a lot, and in a short period of time. So Yeti took advantage for sure. Dorm planning companies took advantage. There were a lot of good options out there, and I'm hopeful that e-commerce entities that have the time to look at this and follow along, that they got to take advantage. Um, One other article that I saw this week, it was a product that's been around for several years actually, but I just not ever heard of it before or seen an article about it before. But I wanted to talk about it here, Jay, and that's a company called Tip Top. And so TipTop has a platform where you can pay for a portion of or your entire product, the purchase that you're making, by swapping it with another product. And so the example in the article that I read was around, like, it looked like someone was buying a bicycle and maybe trading in their old bike to buy the new one. And so it gives you this discount. It's kind of like your phone upsell, right? Of we're going to give you a $750 credit for your old phone to this against this new $1,250 phone. So now you only have to pay $500 for the phone, and we'll take your old one off your hands. It looked a lot like that, and I thought that that was a really interesting way for e-commerce generally to go, like, or to head, right? It's kind of, we used to, way back in the day, we used to barter everything, right? You swapped this for that, you swapped that for the other thing. If you needed something around your house, you asked somebody to do it for you and said, I'll do something for you. And then, then currency became more, universally adapted, right? And people started using currency more, and now we're kind of going back. It's like the history of the world. Like, you just kind of go back. Everything is a big times a flat circle or something, right? But I thought it's a really, really interesting model, because I like the idea of it, because it will allow people to have less waste, right? Because that bicycle, if you had it on your own, maybe you sell it on Craigslist, sure, if it's a bike. But if it's something that's not that big, maybe not as valuable, maybe that's just a thing you would have thrown away before, and now you have this alternative opportunity to basically to upgrade, which I think is it's a really, really neat idea. What thoughts do you have about that, Jay?
There are many a time when you drive through the neighborhood and somebody puts a bike out on the street, and
Mm-hmm.
in my neighborhood, it doesn't last like a half an hour. Somebody grabs it. And,
Right.
If you're going to do that and upgrade, as you say, I think it's a great
Yeah.
idea, because you might want something different, but what you had might be perfect for somebody else in their situation. So,
Right.
it's great. I mean, let's not fill our landfill so quickly at this point.
Right.
Let's reuse some things.
Yeah, no, I love it. I while we've been talking about it, though, I did realize the, like, downside of this is if you're buying back a bunch of really lousy crap, maybe it's a little bit more difficult to get off of that stuff. But I'm sure there's some thought process that's given to that to make sure that they're not getting themselves in too much trouble.
Think about that let's look at that from the eyes of an insurance company. They have reinsurance for those situations. So I am sure the purchaser of that equipment probably has arrangements with scrap metal companies or recyclers that they can off-put those goods, so they're not stuck with that.
Yeah,
So
you would hope so.
no, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the way I think about, I think about pawn stores, right? Like, it's kind of like that, but on a more e scale. It's like an e pawn shop almost, where, but those places are always seem to, like, be doing great. So there's must be something that works in that model, for sure. So I'm sure I'm sure they're not giving you fair value for whatever you're swapping in. I bet has a lot to do with it. But they are giving you something, which again is a neat model for sure.
Yeah.
On the reselling platform eBay, that it looked like over the past week or so, eBay had an auto relist glitch. So if you're selling stuff on eBay, my understanding of the process is that when your auction or whatnot times out, normally eBay would relist that product for you if you've told them that that's what you'd want to do after a certain period of time. But it looks like that there was a big lag in that process. So if you're seeing that your eBay sales are a little lighter than they used to be, or at least over the past week or so, that may be something that you want to investigate and look into a little bit more. So I wanted to bring that up. Wanted to point that out. One other thing that I saw that happened over the past week, I believe this was this week that the report was released, the USPS OIG, which I don't know what that stands for, but I'm sure it's like some governing body of some sort. But they released an audit report of their findings on their Ground Advantage program for 2023. And so the Ground Advantage, I think, at least my understanding, again from reading the article, I don't use the postal service as much as I'm sure a lot of e-commerce entities do directly. But it's the Ground Advantage was a simpler version of a bunch of older versions where you had a bunch of different choices that you could make, and they kind of smushed them all into one. And so they found that Ground Advantage had a package volume increase, so people were using the postal service more than they had been the year prior. But some of the efficiency goals of smooshing all those programs together weren't being met, and there wasn't a lot of color added to why that was happening. But I'm guessing it has a lot to do with it's the same type of program, but just with a new name, and so some of those efficiencies that you'd hope that you can gain like are a little bit more challenging to do. Jay, do you have any extra thoughts on USPS or Ground Advantage? Did you use them in your shipping back in the day?
No, we used UPS and FedEx. We played each of them off each other for better pricing.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, that was pretty much it. We had information delivery, whatever that was called, service through the U.S. Postal Service,
Okay.
and I would find out what was coming in my mail every day. All of a sudden, it stopped,
Mm,
and you go and log in, and it's like, oh, this address is not available for this service. There was information delivery or something like that, but it was like really weird. And I start searching it, and it's like it just like disappeared. It's like kind of crazy. So like they're bringing out new services, they're modifying some of the services that they're doing, and
right.
they're not telling the people out there. So I liked it because when I traveled, I knew when I had to tell my daughter to hit the mailbox. And
Yeah.
like I told you earlier today, I checked the mailbox today, and it was all political mailers. Nothing made it in the house.
Ugh, yuck. That is tough. One other thing that's really, really, really important, and that at least I have no idea how this would impact accounting, but I'm sure it has. You're likely all aware that something that CrowdStrike did today is shutting down the world, or at least the Windows world. Um, they updated some type of information within their code and caused a big time Microsoft glitch, which has caused all kinds of different problems around the world, which surely means that it's impacting shipping and probably also um, just the e-commerce environment in general. Jay, what do you think about CrowdStrike? What do you think about what happened here?
I am just happy I'm at home in Orlando and I am not traveling today.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
know. Yeah.
just looking at the pictures of the airports, it was crazy this morning. Um,
Right.
but looking at the story, and most individuals weren't impacted because CrowdStrike works mostly with enterprise versions of Windows.
Yep.
So, if you were on the standard home or the pro version, you should be fine. It's those corporate environments where they're on enterprise and they're also either subscribing or their Microsoft platforms are subscribing to the Falcon product of CrowdStrike that
Right.
it's impacted. And there is a quick fix to it if you can boot your system up into safe mode. And,
Yeah.
you know, reading some of the stories and the horror stories, it's like the airlines, all those boards, they're run off servers that people don't ever touch. So it's like you might miss one somewhere. It's like, hey, we got to get them up and running. That's a lot of work to go back and reboot them. And hopefully,
Yeah.
if they're using a managed service provider, they can do all that remotely and be able to do that. So it's a lot of
Right.
work, and who knows what the downstream effects are going to be of this.
Yeah, and I don't know that we will. Obviously, we won't today, but I'm sure it's going to cause problems for a few days, just like weather does with travel. It can when you take an entire day's worth of people and you try and cram them in a different day, that gets to get real tight real fast. And so it will be interesting to see what's next. It's like all of these world events just keep happening. which is
definitely.
really, really, what a time to be alive. One last thing. It is always interesting, I think, to have the realization of how your tax money is being utilized. And so this on Monday, I like last Friday actually, I got a call from Collin County, that's where I live, to remind me of my upcoming jury service on Monday, which I had forgotten about. So thank you, Collin County, for giving me a call. On Monday, I went to go hang out with and serve my civic duty for to be on a jury panel or whatever. I did not get selected, but it really did enjoy sitting there and in the courthouse and understanding, like, it really is a good reflection point of what the point of the taxes are, right? Like, these are not our federal taxes. This is not the IRS stuff that's funding these courthouses, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's tax money somewhere else. And it's similar, right? There are those types of civil services are things that I know I take for granted and don't really give a lot of thought to. And so it was a good reminder of what's going on, what we're funding, and kind of why some of those things are happening, why you have to pay the tax. So, and I got a lot of reading in instead of spending a lot of time on Twitter or something. So jury duty I did this week. That was fun. It was definitely a good experience for me, even though I wasn't selected. I got to go sit and through the process, which was. Which I don't. Jay, did you watch this? I don't even remember who was in the show, but there was a show. It may have even been called Jury Duty, where like they had a bunch of actors in and one guy on the jury that they like were just acting ridiculous around. There was a whole like mockumentary around jury duty, and so it was really interesting to like live that like directly. So anyway, I had jury duty, and that's where my taxes are going, I think. Any other news this week, Jay? Anything that we didn't talk about or didn't include already?
Well, and I know we decided we were not going to hit on that tax update thing.
But you want to bring it back?
Item at the bottom of our news list.
I know.
There has been no new tax updates to discuss.
Right.
But a story came across my desk talking about the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like primed this topic for today. So so what happens if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires? We'll get into that after we discuss.
But before we do, Jay, it is called On the Rocks. It's called On the Rocks mostly because of you, not because of me. What is on the rocks today?
I ran out of Coke, so I have Bullet and Sprite today.
There you go. It's a Whiskey 7. I love it. Big fan. If I go for the liquor choice, that's typically where I would head myself, 7 and 7 style. Today, I am being tucked in by strangers, which is weird. Speaking of crime and all that kind of stuff, we got some criminals on the bottle of the can here. This appears to be from Paperback. I'm not familiar with them. This is the first beer that I've had from them. But it's good and I enjoy it. West Coast IPA, this one, and then of course when that one is done, Houston Haze. Shout out to Houston. Still recovering from barrel. Not great, but they're coming back along. Hopefully they've got all their power back by now. I have not checked that though. So if you're in Houston and you don't have power back, I'm sorry. Hopefully they'll get that figured out. Yikes.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I like absolutely hate is getting to December and like scrambling to clean up my books or taking last minute actions to like help people to avoid taxes. It's just the absolute pits. So, past that, like past doing it at the end of the year, tax planning isn't just a December activity. It's important to do first off, right? You need to do it. And then past that, it's important to do throughout the year. And so today, that's exactly what we're going to chat about. We're going to talk about why you should do tax planning, why it's important in the first place. We'll incorporate some of the things that specifically matter related to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then after that, we'll highlight some big reasons why you should be doing that now instead of waiting till the end of the year. So first, Jay, why should we tax plan at all? What's the point of tax planning?
Well, there are a lot of factors that go into why tax plan. Number one, you know, make sure that you're paying the proper amount of tax. And that proper
Mm,
amount of tax is the lowest amount you are legally required to pay. And this isn't tax evasion, it's tax maximization. And what we want to do is make sure that we are keeping as much of our profits in our pocket while paying the government our fair share. And
right.
while we are doing that, we also want to make sure that we are maintaining cash flow management, because with these payments, we want to make sure that we have the funds to make our estimated payments and yet have the funds on hand to pay our suppliers so that we can have our goods for Black Friday. So if we
Yeah.
didn't cash tax plan and cash flow plan, we wouldn't be able to do that. So it's important to do
Right.
that.
Right. It's really
And
important to do that because
for sure.
from the other side too, right? Because if you're just going about your business regularly, you are paying your vendors, you are doing those things, and you may not be thinking about the gigantic tax bill that you have due, or even the small one that you have due.
Hmm.
And then, of course, what happens when you don't pay that tax bill? A variety of things. The first one is that you will be assessed penalties because you didn't pay on time. The second is that the longer that that stays outstanding, you will also be assessed interest. And so, in the end, you may end up paying even more cash. And so, it's so important to manage those payments so that you can make them timely, so that you don't have to worry about that penalty and interest that you could potentially have to pay if you end up not having cash available to make the payment. It's really really important.
Yeah, and what you're hitting on right there is the compliance standpoint. So, your taxes are due and payable on March 15th, April 15th, depending on what you're filing. But based on, well, actually, they're all due on April 15th because the pass-throughs are March 15th. But a lot of what impacts your 1040s is those pass-through companies, the s-corps and the partnerships. So,
Yeah.
in order to know what your payments are, you have to, you know, have your taxes completed for your business, and then you do your taxes. And yes, they're due on April 15th. And people say, well, I'm filing an extension, I don't need to pay. That extension is an extension of time to file, not an
Right.
extension to pay. And on top of that, there are other rules that require estimated payments, and that's the compliance part. The payments are due 4 times throughout the year. First time on April 15th, and the second payment, which was this last week on July 15th. So
Go time.
those payments are set up based on what your tax was the prior year. And basically, the basics of that are you have to pay 100% of your tax due from the prior tax year, or 90% of the tax due from the current year. So that, and if your income is at a certain threshold, then you have to pay a higher threshold of that. But we
Mm.
won't get into. Let's talk about the overall structure here. So
Yeah.
you have to make these payments, and you know, for me, when I'm doing this and I'm looking at it for a client, I want to make sure that they're not having to overpay or underpay. And if we're running tax plans and doing evaluations, doing it in April when they just got through the first quarter really doesn't give a lot of information, not a lot of
Yeah.
direction as to where the profit's going to go. But to
Yeah.
me,
Sure.
the best time to do that is July, because now you've got 6 months down. And then hopefully you have a forecast or projection of what you're planning on doing the remainder of the year. And for the companies we're working with, that last quarter is their biggest quarter of the year. So it
Yeah.
sometimes plays
There's-
havoc on the tax plan. And,
Yeah.
we'll talk about some things there shortly. But, if your your income is falling short of what it was the prior year, well, you have to look and project out what it's going to be for the remainder of that year. And when we're
Right.
doing that, we're projecting based on the history and taking that 6 months and extrapolating it out. And then we will adjust it based on what we actually know. And that gets us where that net income is going to be for the year to give us that number. And if you're going to come in lower, significantly lower, well, you might want to lower your estimated payments and roll them out,
Yeah.
and keep some of that money in your pocket because, you know,
Yeah.
you're going to file and they get a refund, and you're going to get the refund. You're not going to get interest or anything on that. Now, if
Yeah.
it goes out longer, they will pay you interest, but that money is probably best served in your hands being used for working capital versus having
Right.
to pay a line of credit and interest, and now you're collecting interest because you have the funds. So it's
Right.
a lot of factors that go into it. And
Right.
then the other side of that is you're blowing up and you're scaling and your income's going through the roof. Well, you don't want to, you don't want to pay what you owed last year and then still owe twice that in April. So let's spread that
Right.
out and make it cash flow friendly. So you had something to
Yeah.
throw in there?
No, no, no. I just think that though that doing tax planning in general, that it is a component of strategic decision making, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is critical because it helps you to do exactly what you're talking about, Jay. It helps you to plan when you need to make your tax payments, how much they're expected to be, how much you're going to have to pay next year, or in those cases where you're now overpaying, like how much of a refund you need to be thoughtful about. And so
Right.
in those cases, like that's the timing of just tax payments. But you can also inform other strategic decisions around your business related on this, right? So it's like in those situations where you're having a really good year, like you may have the opportunity to make investments in technology or in people or in different products that can that you might not be able to make otherwise, because your business isn't doing as well, and you get a tax savings when you do that, right? Because you're expending that money and you're using that capital now, which allows it to typically be reduced in some capacity, right, from your overall taxable income. And so making strategic decisions not only around when you're making tax payments, but also around like the rest of your business decisions is extremely important. And that's something that you want to be able to plan for and that you want to be thoughtful about of, is this a year that I can do that? Can I pay out extra bonuses? Can I bring on an extra person? There's a lot that goes into that type of planning that's not just like your own internal cash flow management, but also incorporates the tax situation around it. Um, One other thing that I think is really important when it comes to tax planning is the tax savings that you can get. And so I know that there's a wide variety of deductions and credits and incentives that are out there that can reduce your overall tax burden. And if you don't do proper planning, you may not even know that those exist. Um, Jay, are there like specific examples that you have of when you did a tax plan and it worked out awesome like that, where you were able to identify a good deduction, credit, or incentive for someone or for yourself?
Well, there are a couple instances. First thing to look at is, what's on your capital expenditure budget for the year, or what's
Mm,
on it for the following year that maybe if you're having a super year, you accelerate those purchases and bring them in this current year to take advantage of Section 179 or bonus depreciation, which is kind of caught in the middle right now. That's one of those things that we've been talking about for like the last 6 months, whether we were going to pass the extenders or not. So we were at 100% bonus depreciation. That, and the way that was set up in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it was going to decline. That 100% was going to decline to a zero factor and bring that back to normal depreciation. And the
mm,
current bill that's awaiting review on the Senate, it has that where they're going to restore that back to the original 100% bonus. So,
oh yeah,
those
right.
things all
Nice.
come into play.
Right.
And, and like we always talk about, it's like, what is going to happen and when are these changes going to take place? And it's a lot like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Is it going to expire? And
Right.
that is now that it will expire at the end of next year. We have to start looking at that and planning for that, because there might be some tax advantageous changes we can make. When
Right.
it was originally enacted in 2017, the s-corp tax rate was dropped to 21.5%. And there was
Huge.
everybody's like, well, we're going to convert our s-corps to c-corps. And well, lo and behold, they came out with the QBI deduction, the qualified business income deduction, which is 20%, and drops in, and there's some floors and ceilings there that some of it goes away, but overall that helped equalize that for the pass-through businesses. Well, if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act does not get extended, that will go away. And so now we're going to have that whole conversation again. Should we convert our S-corps to C-corps?
The C-corp.
And the big question now is, the Congressional Budget Office is trying to predict what's going to happen there so they can see the impact that it's going to have.
Right.
So, it is a huge, huge factor there. And not knowing what's going to happen plays into it just as much as knowing what will. Because we know in the back of our mind they're going to do something about it. It's just a matter of when. So we have to be ready to act on it and kind of plan for it, and for it not to happen, and say, okay, this is the scenarios we're looking at.
Right.
So that's that from that perspective.
And so then we've talked about like why to plan, right? We talked about cash flow management. We talked about identifying specific tax savings. We've talked about staying compliant, and then we've talked about allowing yourself to make strategic decisions. Are there other reasons that that it's worth tax planning, or are those kind of the best highlights?
No, that's the majority of it. The
sure.
other situation I was going to bring up when you asked about other situations during tax planning, I had a client that was renting property, and we worked out a cash flow plan that allowed them to purchase a property. And when they did that, we talked about cost segregation and being able to rip that building apart. And from an accounting standpoint, we didn't actually rip it apart, but we took all the different systems and were able to depreciate them and accelerate the depreciation. So, we connected them with a cost segregation firm that does that, and they specialize in that. And, it's one of those firms that will be here, that is not going anywhere. So that helped, really helped with that building and the depreciation. To bring it home,
there's no question.
And help them cash flow in the first year. So
the being able to take advantage of those types of things. If you're not doing a tax plan and you just buy a building and you don't give it any thought, and you're just like, oh, it's a building, you're missing a lot of opportunity. And so doing some kind of tax plan for, especially in situations like that, can have infinity almost impact. Those cost segregations go a long way, especially when a lot of those categories are bonus depreciation, where you get to accelerate the tax losses right now. That can go a very, very long way, and so that can be a huge opportunity. So we've talked about planning, right, and why it's important to plan. Jay, you mentioned it, or you alluded to it while we were talking of now's the best time, because later in the year, it's going to be December, it's going to be November, it's going to be Black Friday. You're going to be just busy all over the place. You're just not going to have time to do tax planning at the end of the year, but you're going to want to have because your tax bill is now looking like it might be high, right? So that's an important reminder of why it is so important to do it right now. But I'm sure that's not the only reason, Jay. Do you have a few others, or others that you like to pitch to people when you're like, hey, let's do some tax planning right now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to what are their goals. Well, I mean, when you're
Sure.
working with a client, you want to have those conversations and find out what's important to them. What are they trying to achieve in the next 12
Yeah.
months to 5 years? And,
Right.
when you dig into each of their specific situation, they're trying to save for something, or their kids going off to college, or they're hitting retirement, or they have a plan to hit retirement, or they want to sell the business, and all that comes into play. And
Right.
it's important to have those conversations and understand what they're trying to do. And then you know everything depends on the explicit situation of that client and their business.
Yeah, of course.
People say,
Right.
give me some blanket information. There's only a few things that you can really give that are blanket, because what works for me might not work for you based on your exact situation that you're in
Right.
financially. So we have to look at
Yep.
it on that basis. And you know the best time to do it, and like I said earlier, you've got 6 months of history. You can kind of forecast where you're going. I did this last week with a client, and I went back over the last 3 years and pulled out their revenue by quarter. And I've pulled out, it's like your profit drops in the last quarter of the year $100,000 every year.
Mhm.
And he's like, yeah, my prediction is this. And I gave him the prediction number that I had. He gave me his number, and we were dead on. I mean, within
Awesome.
5K. And
Yeah.
knowing the situation of that business, we can now plan what they can do between August and December. Because once
Yeah.
you hit December, it's too late. You might be able to
Yeah.
plan, but you're not going to be able to enact and get those things done in order to get it
Right.
done in effect.
Yeah, and so that's why it's so important to start that process of tax planning now. The One of the most important reasons is that you have time to do stuff. If you need to make a change, or you need to make an edit, or you need to plan a bonus, or you need to give people raises, or you need to buy a gigantic piece of equipment, that doesn't happen overnight. You need time to be able to implement that strategy. And especially if it's
Exactly.
like you were talking about before, where it was in your 2 or 3 year plan, but now you're having a good first part of the year and you're expecting that
Yeah.
to continue, and you want to pull it into this year now. Like you need to be able to have time to do those things, because that ability to make change and effective change isn't something, again, it's just not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes time to do. You have to research, you have to do some studying, you have to do some learning, you have to talk to people, you have to send in POs and invoices and all this kind of stuff, right? There's all kinds of different things that you have to do to make sure that you're ready to do any of that stuff.
The
And so it is really
logistics,
important.
getting it installed and operational before the end of the year, all those things.
So important. So
So
important. You can't
important.
do that at Christmas time, right? You just don't have enough time. But you can do that between July 19th and the end of the year, August 1st and the
Yeah.
end of the year. And so, one of the most important reasons why it's important to have a tax plan and to have those conversations and to be having them now is because it gives you time to actually do something. Um, one of the other reasons is one that Jay brought up before. When you have quarterly taxes that are due, checking it mid-year to make sure whether or not you're in line with where you were expecting to be, whether you're going to end up in the situation where maybe you do need to you could afford to tone down a little, right? Because maybe your sales aren't as high as you would have liked for them to be, and the 90% or 80% or whatever the number was of last year's tax is just now a little bit higher than what you'll need. You can do some planning for that. You can do that now, so that when you make quarterly payments in October, or get ready to make whatever the final payments are in January or whatnot, you can be prepared. Um, what else, Jay? What else is helpful for doing tax planning right now?
Well, ultimately, the most important part is maintaining your books and records, making
Right.
sure they're up to date, they're accurate, so that when you're pulling this information out, you're using numbers that you can rely on, and
Yeah.
that you're going to make projections based upon. And
Real stuff.
if you end up going the wrong direction, and you have some misstatements in your books, you know,
Right.
it's gonna hit you in the profit side on the business. It's gonna hit you on the tax side because you might have more tax to pay, and
Yeah.
or it could be going the opposite direction, and you're understating, so then you're projecting lower sales. You might not have the correct inventory on hand, things along those
Mm.
lines. So all that
Yeah.
plays into having a good proper tax plan.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you described there. I think that inventory example is a great one because if your cost of sales isn't relieving properly, and you look at that at December 31st, um, and you have now realized, well, maybe it's the other way, right? Maybe your cost of sales is relieving too much, and you look at it at December 31st, and you're like, wait a second, that's not the right number. I have now $500,000 worth of profit that I didn't have before. That becomes a big problem. But if you
Surprise.
identify that now, you can adjust it now. First off, you can now start to make those plans that we've talked about. You can identify, oh, now I have $500,000 more profit that or income that I can manage, right? Like you can make change, right? And so that's why it is so important. It also helps you too because invariably over the course of the year, like you have some clearing account that doesn't quite clear, you have some like rounding account where like a plug number goes, you have like an accrual account that has some accrual that didn't properly reverse and it just kind of stays at a certain balance because that accrual doesn't flip properly or something like that, right? That happens invariably every single time somebody has some kind of small little problem like this. But if you check it right now, you'll be able to clean it up. But if you wait to December, there might be a whole lot of them. They might have piled up over time.
They
There might
snowball
be
over
so
time.
Yeah, exactly. You may have now all of those things instead of just one of them. And so by taking the time to review your financial information now, you'll be able to set yourself up for it to be easier and more expedient in the future. And you can also take the time now to identify whether or not you have other underlying problems, other issues that are out there, things that may be happening. Maybe your sales tax platform is calculating incorrectly. But if you haven't looked at it in a while, you wouldn't have known. But if you take now as the time to look at it, like you can identify, okay, this is a problem. This is something that now I can fix now. Now I can make sure that I'm also not having a problem later, and make sure that overall your books and records are clean. So again, like Jay was talking about, that you can project properly with the right information, and you don't have any surprises at the end of the year when you have to clean those things up and have to get them right. It is really, really important.
Yeah, and like Chris was saying, having that information correct, and like using a platform like Zero that you can use yourself or use in conjunction with us as your advisor, you can review that on a monthly basis and see things like, hey, why is this account throwing off credits now all of a sudden? And
Yeah.
you're not waiting months to review that, because you see
Right.
that on a month in and out basis, and now you can fix it and deal with it and
Well, yeah.
see,
I mean, we have
and that situation actually that Chris is talking about actually impact cash flow for a client. And
yeah.
we ended up figuring out what the problem was, and now
And now we're going to fix
we've
it.
got to implement a
Well,
solution and move forward.
and there was another one that I saw recently too, where when a firm got purchased, like some of the activity that was happening in a firm, like it changed the way that the inventory management system was recording that transaction activity, because now it looked like Shopify, or whoever it is with it was a Shopify or whoever. I think it was Shopify. So it looked like that, right? And so it got the transactions confused, and so weird things were happening between clearing accounts. But if we weren't taking the time to look at it now and be like, hey, well, this is kind of weird, like what's happening here? Like we could have ended up with a huge disaster at the end of the year that we would have had to have explored for 8 to 10 months of time. But by identifying it now, we've found what the problem was. We identified how to fix it, and we have. So now going forward, it's super easy. We just changed the way that things are coded, and everything is so much cleaner now. So that can be really important. And then I mentioned this at the top of talking about why now, but in December, in November, like you have Thanksgiving, you have all the family time. You have Christmas, you have all the family time. You have Black Friday, so you have all the time of managing your business and making sure that your products are actually selling. You have Christmas, making sure all of your products are actually selling. You do not have the time, no matter how much time you think you have, to sit around and focus on making these changes and making these updates, because there are a lot of people who aren't focused on that and are trying to make those edits and updates at the very end. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. And so by getting ahead of that and being ahead of that, you can be well prepared going into the future. Jay, are there any other reasons or any other thoughts that you have on why tax planning and just general book prepping right now is so important?
You know, you said it, prepping. I mean, being prepared and knowing, having
Yeah.
that information. You know,
Right.
I think ultimately, as we've said for months, cash is king. Know when your bills are due, when that cash is coming out of your account, when it's coming in, and
Right.
that will give you the best tools and information to run your business. Because ultimately, that's what it's about: is running your business and having the information to make timely, accurate business decisions. So that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
Right, and so from that perspective, the next thing to ask is where should you start? And I think Jay and I would both agree the first place you start is exactly what we were just talking about. You should look at your financials. You should make sure they're clean. We're kind of right after the end of June, so this is kind of when your mid-year close is probably getting wrapped up. So this is the perfect time to start a mid-year financial review because it's mid-year. And if you don't do it now, you definitely want to do it at the end of July. So you want to make sure that you're looking at your balance sheet and that you understand, are the liabilities that are out here, are the assets that are out here, are they correct? Do they represent something, or is there some underlying problem that I'm not aware of that's making it build up over time or making it just look wrong in general? Um, so you want to make sure that you understand that, and then you also want to make sure you understand, are there areas for improvement? Are there things that you could be doing better, more streamlined, more efficiently? And Jay and I talked last week about how Ramp can help you with that on the expense management side. There are solutions like Ramp across the platform of AR, of AP, of all of those different types of management. You can find all kinds of things that can help your business be better, and you want to, because this is the best time to implement those things. You have time, you have the ability to do that before now and the end of the year, right? This is a good time for that. Once you've got those financials ready to go, the best thing that you can do, in my opinion, is to consult with a tax professional, somebody who knows what it means to adjust your quarterly tax estimate, somebody who knows what it means to optimize your deductions and credits, somebody who knows what it means to plan. Right? That consulting with a tax professional can be critical in this situation, right? Because those people have been through it before. They're going to know clients that are similar to you. They're going to know the problems that you have, and they're going to know the way that you can manage them. And again, like Jay talked about it a little while back, each tax plan is individualized. They're all different because every situation is different. But a tax professional, somebody with that professional experience, somebody who is well qualified, can give you insight because they have that experience, because they've been exposed to lots of different situations, and they know which ones can help guide yours. And so I think that the second thing that I would say is, after you've made sure your financials are good, talk to your tax professional. Make sure that they know what you want to do, that you know what you want to do, and you know what that means for your business and your cash flow. Jay, is that the right second thing to do, or is there a better one?
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Know what you're willing to do and what you're going to commit to, and work the plan.
Work the plan, and that may be adjusting quarterly estimates, like I mentioned. That may be making sure that you have accurate estimate data. So if you need to change your estimates because your profits higher or lower, whichever way it may be, like doing that is important. That tax professional may also have tools or resources that can help you with those calculations. I mean, for a fee, I'm sure they can do it for you, and make sure that you're in a good shape, right? And then the other thing that you can do is the strategic planning that we talked about. That means optimizing deductions and credits, understanding what common deductions are out there for your business, for your e-commerce entity, or your entity at large, your real estate holding that you just purchased. And then consulting with the tax professional allows you to understand how best to track and maximize those types of deductions. And then I think the last thing that you want to do, once you've identified that your financials are in good shape, once you've consulted with a tax professional and you've identified that your quarterly estimates are good to go, that you've taken advantage of all deductions and credits, the next thing that you want to do is what we talked about at the very beginning here, and that is strategic decision making. Understand what you want to do next. Set a plan to go into the next part of this year to achieve whatever goal you want to achieve, to make sure that you and your business are doing the best that they can going forward. Jay, what did I miss?
Last step.
What's the last step?
Consultation in October. Review.
Oh, there you go.
In the following
So
3
important.
months, and see if that trajectory is maintaining, or you might be scaling even greater, or you might have fallen off. And that's
Right.
where the tax plan becomes malleable, and you work it to what's going on in the situation, and then predict what that last quarter is going to do and try to work it from there. And there have been many times when I've met early in December based on November year-to-date information, and made a few more strategic things. But if we waited until November to do it, it'd be too late. I mean,
Right.
You cannot implement everything you need to do, like we've been talking about. So, yeah.
No, and so one of the Jay and I have talked a lot about how there is definitely some uncertainty about what's going to happen at the end of the year, because we don't know what's going to happen in the tax environment. It's just unknown, and but there are some things that aren't going to change. Like your income is still going to be taxed, and it's just a matter of understanding what rate, what bracket, all that kind of nonsense, right? Like that is important, but that strategic planning around your business, like that part's not going to change. You still need to do that now. But come election time, it may be, this year particularly, it may be that much more important to check in with your tax professional around that time to say, all right, now that we know what we know, what other changes do I need to make, or what other last minute things can I do? And so by having that conversation even right now, that allows you to be prepared to have that conversation in the future, to understand maybe kind of what the forks are in that road of, okay, we have this option if this happens, and this option if that happens. And so this year, more than any other, for at least since I'd say 2017, 2016, something like that, is a very important one for tax planning, because there can be significant impacts and significant change that can occur out of just kind of things that you can't control. So it's definitely something that you'll want to watch out for, and it's definitely something that is a fantastic last point of tax planning in July only. Not a great idea. Tax planning throughout the year, very, very important. And this year, more than any, but it's true all the time. But this year more than any, a check-in with your tax professional, say November 15th or so, probably a very good thing to do. So with that, Jay, what's going on this next week? You got any weekend plans or anything big coming up in the next week or so?
Weekend plans. We are celebrating my nephew's birthday on Sunday. Gonna head down and meet my family at one of the Disney hotels. Spend a day at the pool. Other than that, I'm excited for NASCAR back in Indianapolis, running the Brickyard, the real Brickyard.
Let's go.
Of course. So excited for that. And next week, I'm I'm back in tax mode, so attacking what returns we have
You're
left and try to
ex,
get them done.
ex, executing tax plans, I hope. Um,
Some,
so
but a
that's
lot of
great.
it's prep stuff too.
Sure. I mean, that is another thing, like truly, like the 10/15 deadline is only 3 months away. Like it's not that far. So if
Yep.
you did extend, it's definitely time to make sure you've gotten all of your stuff to your tax preparer, and that they can take care of it now, so that you don't do the same thing that we just talked about and get to the deadline and start to scramble. So if you haven't already filed your taxes for 2023. Make sure to connect to your tax
Do it.
professional and give them what they need, right? This is an important thing. This weekend, well, tonight actually, my wife is going out with a couple moms in the neighborhood. They're doing a little mom's night thing. I don't even know where they're going, but it sounds like it's going to be fun. So it's me and baby, and really, I think they're going out late because they all have kids, right? So they're all putting the kids down or helping to put the kids down, and they're going out afterwards. So it may just be me tonight. So I'm going to probably when I mentioned before. I don't know if I said this. I set down my phone and started reading, and I started rereading Game of Thrones. And so tonight, that's where I'll be. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through Game of Thrones, the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire, and so tonight, spoiler alert, everyone! If you haven't watched Game of Thrones, going to spoil it for you. Season 1 right now. Ned dies, right? And so that's probably going to happen tonight. I think we're getting. I know. I spoiler alerted. I'm sorry. I tried to warn you. So so anyway, he hasn't been thrown in jail yet, so maybe I won't get all the way to his beheading. But I'm getting close. We're getting close. So I'll probably be reading a lot of that this weekend, and then my wife is continuing to study for certification stuff. So. I will continue to spend the weekend mornings with my daughter, which I have just absolutely loved. I have taken her to local parks both of the past 2 weekends and taken probably like a million pictures. That's not true, but like a lot of pictures of her playing around in the parks. And so I am sure that I will do that again this weekend. And then next weekend, I have different plans. So next weekend, I'm putting shelving up in our garage. So I got to get ready for that too. So that'll be happening this next week. And then, of course, we'll see what the fallout was from CrowdStrike and what's going on there. We'll see if there's any fallout from the Republican National Convention, which is this week, and we didn't really talk about, and the nomination of J.D. Vance as the vice president nominee, or whatever they be called when they're on the ballot. Candidate, yep, vice presidential candidate, yep. Thanks, Jay. So we'll see if there's anything that falls out from him. Jay and I talked already about checking into his feelings on taxes and what he thinks about going on there. So it should be pretty plain week, but at the same time, like it's a good time to do tax planning. It's a good time to make sure that you're ready now for the rest of 2024 and that you're getting ready for 2025, even though we're only halfway through 2024. It's a really, really bizarre place to be in as an auditor because I used to live the opposite side of this, where around this time of year I'd still be in 2023. So now looking forward to 2025 is very, very different than it used to be. Anyhow, thank you all for watching today. Thank you for listening to Jay and I talk about tax planning. If you haven't already, or if you don't have your own tax professional, please feel welcome to reach out to us to talk about tax planning. It is something that brings a smile to Jay's face every single time we talk about it. He truly said it was his favorite thing to do, and I believe it. So if you need a tax plan, come talk to Jay. He can help you out for sure. And then if you need your books and records cleaned up because you're like, wait a second, hold on, I have what going on my balance sheet now? Come talk to High Rock in general. So to all of you who watched, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. We'll talk about something great, I'm sure. And we'll be here again next Friday.
And if you
Thanks for
liked what
watching.
you heard, subscribe.
Oh yeah, comment,
Yeah,
subscribe, like and subscribe.
yeah, for
Comment.
sure.
Tell us what was
All
good.
right.
Tell us what was bad. Do all of those things. We want the feedback. We want to make sure that this conversation is a valuable one for you. That you enjoy listening to us talk about whatever it is that we're talking about. So
Yeah,
please
join the conversation.
join the conversation. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you want us to talk about. Tell us what you're interested in. We'd love to hear about it. Absolutely. So thank you all, and have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend, Chris. See everybody.
Yep.